My name is Sheila, and I'm 32 years old. If you ask my ex-fiancé, I overreacted. If you ask my family, I finally showed restraint. The truth sits somewhere quieter than either of those versions. It began at my grandmother Elena's 90th birthday dinner in the restaurant she opened in 1978 with my late grandfather, back when all they had was borrowed money, stubborn hope, and recipes carried across an ocean. To anyone else, it was just a small Italian restaurant with red checkered tablecloths and photos on the wall that had yellowed with time. To us, it was sacred ground. Every major family moment had happened at table 12: engagements, birth announcements, apologies, forgiveness. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. My fiancé knew all of this. I'd told her the stories more times than I could count. How my grandmother saved pennies for 5 years to open that place. How my parent grew up doing homework in the kitchen while sauces simmered. How after my father died when I was 10, my grandmother became everything: caregiver, anchor, teacher. She knew that this dinner mattered more than any venue we'd booked for our wedding. The night of the party, she arrived late, dressed like she was headed to a gala instead of a family dinner. Designer dress, salon perfect hair, shoes that clicked too loudly on the tile floor. She stood outside for a moment, looking at the sign like it offended her. "This is it?" she said. "I thought we were going to the nice location uptown." I told her this was the nice location. This was the original. She wrinkled her nose but followed me inside. The entire family was there. Cousins from out of state, uncles who hadn't visited in years, regulars who felt like family because they'd been coming for decades. My grandmother lit up when she saw us, switching languages the way she does when she's happy. My fiancé air kissed her, not a hug, an air kiss for a 90-year-old woman who built everything that paid for the ring on her finger. We sat at the long table. Plates started coming out. My grandmother's meatballs, the lasagna that had won local awards, bread from the same bakery that supplied us since the early 80s. My fiancé pushed her plate away. When my aunt asked if she wasn't eating, she said she was on a cleanse and that the food looked heavy. Strike one. Then my cousin's 5-year-old accidentally knocked over his juice. It splashed onto my fiancé's designer bag. She shrieked, loud, sharp. "Are you kidding me? This is a $3,000 purse. Who lets a child run wild like this?" The restaurant went silent. Not just our table, everyone. My cousin apologized, trying to clean it up, and my fiancé waved her off, disgusted. She said this was exactly why we should have chosen a nice restaurant, not a place full of screaming children. I watched my grandmother's face fall. That was strike two. But she wasn't finished. She turned to me, voice loud enough for everyone to hear, and said she was too good for my family's cheap restaurants, that the place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s, that the food was basically peasant food. She gestured around at the other diners, regular people, families, couples, the backbone of our community for 45 years, and said she wouldn't let future kids think this kind of dining was acceptable. I stood up before I even realized I was moving. My voice was calm when I spoke. I told her she was absolutely right. She smiled, thinking she'd won. I told her she was too good for my family, too good for our history, too good for the woman who built everything she was standing on. Her smile disappeared. I told her everyone heard exactly what she meant. I kissed my grandmother's forehead, whispered that she was gone tomorrow, and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was second-guessing myself, but because my mind was already moving forward, sorting through the practical consequences of a decision that had been a long time coming. By the time the sun came up, the calm I felt was almost unsettling. There was no urge to explain, no need to justify what had happened to anyone who mattered. The line had been crossed publicly, deliberately, and without remorse. That kind of clarity is rare. I wasn't going to waste it. At 9 o'clock sharp, I made my first call. I asked the woman on the other end to cancel the wedding venue reservation for September 15th. She sounded apologetic, told me I'd lose the deposit. I said that was fine and asked her to cancel everything anyway. I hung up and moved down the list. Florist, photographer, DJ, caterer. Ironically, not my family's restaurant, because my ex-fiancé had insisted on a pretentious French place that charged extra for breathing the air inside. By noon, $8,000 in deposits were gone. It hurt for about 3 seconds. Then I reminded myself that it was cheaper than a lifetime of defending my family to someone who despised them. After that, I went to the apartment. Our apartment, technically, though she'd moved in only 6 months earlier. I didn't rush. I packed everything carefully, folding designer dresses the way you do when you're closing a chapter, not burning it. Shoes in their boxes, jewelry wrapped neatly, 23 boxes in total. I left them in the lobby with a note taped to the top. You were right. You deserve better than us. Good luck finding it. I changed the locks and left the engagement ring on the counter. It wasn't mine to keep, but it was no longer hers to wear. The messages started almost immediately. She texted all night, calling me dramatic, saying I'd embarrassed her, demanding I come back and talk like an adult. I didn't respond. In the morning, she escalated. She showed up at my office with her mother. Patricia announced herself at the reception desk like she owned the building, demanding to know what I'd done and why everything had been canceled. Security was called before I even made it downstairs. When I walked into the lobby, Patricia switched from fury to syrupy concern in under a second. She said it must all be a misunderstanding, that her daughter had mentioned a small disagreement about dinner venues. I told her exactly what her daughter had said at my grandmother's 90th birthday in front of my entire family. Patricia winced and said perhaps the phrasing had been unfortunate. I told her the phrasing was accurate. She tried another angle, reminding me the wedding was only 3 months away, that people would talk. I said they could talk all they wanted. The deposits were already gone. That was when my ex-fiancé started crying, real tears this time, accusing me of throwing away $30,000. I corrected her. $8,000. And it wasn't thrown away. It was invested in not marrying someone who thought she was too good for the people who raised me. Security escorted them out while Patricia shouted that her daughter had options and I'd regret this. I wished her luck exercising them. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop, but not with guilt or doubt. The family group chat exploded. My sister messaged to say Grandma wanted to know if I was okay. My mom wrote that she was proud of me. My uncle thanked me for doing what no one else had the patience to do. Even my little cousin asked if the mean lady was gone forever. I said yes. The last message came through my mother, written on my grandmother's behalf. She doesn't text, but she knows how to be heard. My dear Sheila, you are worth more than all the designer purses in the world. Sunday dinner, table 12, don't be late. Table 12, the place where my grandfather proposed, where my parents announced their engagement, where every important family moment had happened, where my ex-fiancé would never sit again. I went to dinner that Sunday. The food tasted better than it ever had. My grandmother didn't ask questions. She just patted my hand and told me I'd done the right thing. I believed her. What I didn't know yet was that my ex-fiancé's so-called options were already closing, one by one, and the higher she aimed, the harder the fall was going to be. The story she started telling about me spread faster than I expected, but it didn't land the way she thought it would. At first it was subtle, posts about knowing your worth and outgrowing small minds. Then it turned sharper, hinting at emotional abuse, control, insecurity. She framed it like I'd canceled the wedding because I couldn't handle her ambition, because I was threatened by her standards. The problem was that everyone already knew the real story. Word travels fast in families like mine, and it travels even faster through restaurant staff, regulars, and the kind of people who notice when a room goes silent for all the wrong reasons. My cousin's husband tends bar at the country club where many of her friends spend their evenings. He heard it all. The revised version where I was jealous, controlling, irrational. And then he heard the pushback. Someone asked if this was the same woman who called Elena Rossi's restaurant cheap and the food peasant food at her 90th birthday. Another asked if it was the same night she yelled at a 5-year-old over a spilled juice. She claimed she'd been taken out of context. Someone else said context doesn't change volume, especially not in front of 60 witnesses. She didn't lose friends overnight, but the support thinned. Invitations slowed. Replies came later. Her version required people to forget what they'd seen and heard with their own eyes, and most weren't willing to do that for her. Still, she believed she could trade up, that if she aimed higher, everything would reset. She dated immediately, not quietly, publicly. New faces every week, each captioned with something aspirational. First was an investment banker who lasted 4 days. She demanded a $500 per person restaurant on their second date and called him cheap when he hesitated. He stopped answering her messages. Then came a man with a European accent who claimed to be an entrepreneur. Turned out he was a waiter who'd practiced the accent for tips. She found out when she surprised him at work and saw him clearing tables. She posted nothing about that one. The third was the one she thought would save her. Old money, real old money. Family foundations, estates with names, the kind of wealth that doesn't need to be loud. She posted about finally finding someone on her level, about attracting what you deserve when you know your worth. Her mother started planning again, talking about venues and dresses like the last 8 months had been a rehearsal. What she didn't know was that families like his do their homework. His mother invited her to tea, antique china, polite smiles, a conversation that moved slowly and deliberately. Somewhere between the second cup and the third question, his mother mentioned peasant food. My ex-fiancé went pale. The Wellingtons had been eating at my grandmother's restaurant for 40 years. Same table, same order. It wasn't a rumor, it was tradition. Then his mother mentioned the trust fund clause, the one that protected family assets from conduct unbecoming. Public disparagement, cruelty, humiliation. It had been there since the 40s and had ended more than a few promising engagements. She left in tears. He broke up with her that evening by text while she was at dinner at a restaurant she paid for herself. That was when her professional life began to wobble. She worked in luxury brand consulting, where image isn't a bonus, it's the product. And my grandmother, Elena Rossi, isn't just a restaurant owner. She's a fixture. She knows the people who own the buildings, the people who cut the checks, the people who decide which names open doors. One of those people had been at her birthday. He heard everything. The call came on a Monday morning. A conversation about values alignment, about client relations, about reputational risk. She wasn't fired. She was encouraged to pursue opportunities elsewhere. She lasted 2 more days before resigning. Desperation followed. She moved back in with her mother. She started a blog about surviving emotional abuse, thinly veiled references to me and my family. She used a photo from my grandmother's birthday without permission. My uncle sent a cease and desist. She took the post down. Screenshots didn't disappear. Someone made a video. It went viral. Millions of views. The comments were brutal, and she disabled them within hours. That was when the call came from her mother, asking me to make it stop. I told her I wasn't doing anything. I reminded her that the internet responds to what's posted, not to what's wished away. She asked if I had no compassion. I said I had plenty. My grandmother had suffered on her birthday. Compassion didn't require amnesia. The collapse wasn't loud anymore. It was just steady. The part no one expected came from my grandmother, and it happened over Sunday dinner like it always does, quietly and without ceremony. We were halfway through the meal, the kitchen humming the way it always has, when she set her fork down and said she'd offered my ex-fiancé a job. I thought I'd misheard her. I asked her to repeat it, and she did, calmly, like she was telling me the weather. She said the girl needed work, and she needed a dishwasher. I told her she didn't owe anyone anything, especially not someone who had humiliated her. My grandmother waved me off. She said she was 90, she'd earned the right to do what she wanted, and she didn't believe in destroying people when you could teach them instead. I didn't believe her when she said my ex had accepted. I believed her even less when she said she'd start the next morning. But she did. The first day she showed up wearing designer gloves to wash dishes, and they dissolved in the industrial soap within minutes. The second day, she complained about the smell and was told to get used to it or leave. The third day, she cried in the walk-in freezer, but she didn't walk out. She kept coming back. By the end of the first week, she stopped wearing makeup. There was no point when you're sweating over a dish pit. By the third week, she ate the staff meal. She didn't call it peasant food. She just ate. I watched it all from a distance. I didn't gloat. I didn't intervene. I didn't need to. My grandmother had taken control of the narrative in the only way she knows how, through work and dignity. She said the best revenge isn't humiliation. It's letting someone see what they threw away. And that's exactly what happened. Every day my ex stood in the kitchen, she saw families eating together, regulars greeting each other by name, staff laughing between orders. She saw the backbone of a community she'd once dismissed with a sneer. She didn't last forever. She stayed 3 months. She worked hard. She never missed a day. She never complained after the first week. When she quit, my grandmother gave her a reference. Not glowing, not cruel, just honest. She said the girl had learned something. Sometimes that's enough. Life moved forward in the ways that matter. I met someone new, not at a gala or a networking event, but in a bookstore. His name is Adrian. He teaches elementary school, drives an old Honda, and cried happy tears when he met my grandmother. He asked for seconds at dinner and then thirds. A week later, I proposed to him at table 12 with my grandmother's blessing. He said yes before I finished the question. On my grandmother's 91st birthday, we celebrated at the newest location. Same family, same table, same love. Halfway through the night, the staff came out singing, carrying a cake. My ex was holding it, still in her apron, hair pulled back, face bare. She placed the cake in front of my grandmother and wished her a happy birthday. My grandmother thanked her, and she went back to the kitchen without looking at me. Later, my grandmother told me the girl was quitting the next day and that she'd earned her reference. She said the one who insulted her was gone, and the one who learned to work was different. Not better. Different. She said dignity isn't designer, it's dishes, it's effort, it's respect. It's knowing no one is too good for honest food made with love. The internet eventually moved on. My family's restaurants didn't. In fact, business improved. New customers came in curious, and they stayed because the food was good and the atmosphere was real. We hired more staff. We kept doing what we've always done. My ex moved on too. New job, new relationship, no public posts about it. Her mother stopped calling. The noise faded. Next spring, Adrian and I will get married at the original restaurant. The reception will be at table 12. The menu will be the same peasant food that's fed generations. The guest list will be full of the kind of people who show up. My grandmother will be there, 5 feet tall, 91 years old, and sharper than anyone else in the room. I didn't cancel a wedding because someone insulted a restaurant. I ended a future that didn't respect my past. And I chose a life where standards aren't measured by price tags, but by how you treat the people who built you.